Call this meeting back to order. We will reconvene our study session. Closed session report, City Attorney.
Yes, the council and aides met in closed session. Listed on the agenda, the item involving real property negotiations with Mark Gabay. We gave a status report. Direction was given for further negotiations. The item involving VIP Motors, we gave a status report. Direction was given for further negotiation. The item involving Sunrise Hacienda Partners was not discussed. The Prairie Schooner litigation was not discussed. The Desert Water Agency real property negotiations were not discussed. Real property negotiations with the Burr Group, we gave a status report. Direction was given for further negotiations. The real property negotiations on Greyhound, we gave a status report. Direction was given for further negotiations. The Desert Healthcare District real property negotiations. The Palm Springs Townhomes real property negotiations. The Stitch real property negotiations were not discussed. The three litigation matters, Calhoun versus City of Palm Springs, Byrne versus City of Palm Springs, and Zufiletto. Direction was given for further negotiations concerning settlement. No action was taken. And then exposure to litigation, we discussed exposure in one case. We gave a status report. No action was taken, and the city attorney evaluation didn't occur.
At this time, we will open the floor for public comments on matters within the jurisdiction of the entities. If there's someone who would like to speak in public comments, please come forward at this time. Give your name to the clerk. You will have 3 minutes. Let's get that mic. There. That one. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Your Honor. I'm Joel Douglas. I'm here tonight to ask the council to right a wrong of a previous administration. My father, Kirk Douglas, was considered by many an icon, even a living legend. He has served his country and he has served this community very well through the USIA in promoting America, that to this day the repercussions and positiveness of what he has done has felt back here in this country, and for which he was awarded the highest award possible, the Medal of Freedom. This is something he's also done within this community that he's lived in for the past 45 years, Palm Springs. He's been a forerunner in the start and development of the Desert Hospital, the Desert Museum. He has contributed lots of money, lots of time, efforts, his names and work to all local charities, and thereby also benefiting them in helping to perpetuate their fundraising efforts continuously over the years. But this is something that Palm Springs knows, because several years ago they wanted to honor his contributions by naming a street after him. And they did the Man of the Year awards dinner, for which tens of thousands of dollars were raised. And shamefully, the past administrations didn't follow through on this commitment of namely the street. What an embarrassing position for Palm Springs to be in, for such a man who has done so much for the community. I know for a fact that Palm Desert and Ranch Mirage offered my father free land and to name a street or rename any street if he would move. And he said, no, Palm Springs is my home. And thank you very much, but this is where I would stay. My dad doesn't know that I'm here tonight, because if he did, he'd tell me to forget it. But I can't forget it. I can't forget it as his son, and I can't forget it as a resident of Palm Springs. has a debt of honor here. And as a resident of Palm Springs, I'm embarrassed and puzzled, very puzzled. But we can rectify this situation, and I propose we do so by renaming the airport entrance road Kirk Douglas Boulevard.
I'm going to have to ask you to come to a conclusion. Your 3 minutes have expired.
That's quick, Ron. Okay. I am asking the board to rename the Airport Boulevard, Airport Road, Kirk Douglas Boulevard. I'm saying this doesn't need a vote. A vote was taken. A decision was made. It needs to be acted upon now. So thank you.
Okay, and thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in public comments? Please come forward this time. Give your name to the clerk. You'll have 3 minutes. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, welcome. Hi, Mayor, City Council. It's a pleasure to see you. My name is Joy Meredith. Haven't been here for a while. I'm glad to be here again this evening. I just want to talk to you really briefly about one of the things that's going to be coming up, and that's the 9/11 communications fee. You know, the police department is going to be coming under a lot of cuts. And in my opinion, that's just one department that we really can't afford to. We're trying to figure out various ways that we could take the budget apart that the police department needs and see if there are other ways that we could fund it besides out of the general fund. This was something that's been done in some other cities. It would add about $1 per month per phone line, but it would have a great impact on a new source of income that the police department could use specifically for communications, however. This is a 911 fee, and so that money would have to go back, though, to that specific purpose. In the future, there's a lot of new plans that the chief has been talking about regarding communications. I mean, there are bigger plans, of course, in the offing, but for right now, it's just something that would really help to offset some of these cuts that we might be seeing, and also at the same time to provide the income that would be required to upgrade or at least keep at the same level what we already have there. So I just want to point that out to you, and I appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
And thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in public comments? If not, then we will close public comments at this point. Council comments? Questions or council comments, questions, or reports?
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Fote?
I want to make a request of the city manager to construct a resolution in regard to our opposition to a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage, and I'd like to see that brought forth at next Wednesday's meeting.
Okay. Are there any other?
There are numerous cities, by the way, that have already passed this, and so you can get some wording if you need from other cities.
Mr. Mills?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. I wondered if I could have a written report from the engineering department on our policy or ordinance and or policy for on-site retention and why we have it and why we are required to have it, if we are required to have it. A concern I have, and it's one I've had for a long, long time, is having to invest a lot of dollars in money that goes down the drain, literally, and the expense involved in that for people building, and also the fact that it's putting all our buildings essentially in a hole, and the look that it's starting to create throughout the city. And it already has a very great effect on Down Valley, and I just want to see how we got there and why we got there, and to further determine if we should keep going there. So that's the gist of what I'm after in the report. And I also have a concern that we have a very, am I too close to this thing? that we have as all of us know, our town, our city is developing rapidly right now. We have very few areas of town that are in their original state or are in a potential that we could determine better what goes on those properties. And I'm speaking specifically of the Chino Cone. Now, right now, the only development in the Chino Cone, and I'm talking about from Tramway North, and I'm talking about on the west side of Highway 111. We certainly have the Shadow Rock project approved up there, and we have the visitor center, and that's virtually it. I feel very strongly that that is a very important element to the city of Palm Springs. It's the entry of our town. It is long been a treasured view corridor, and I think we need to entertain a specific plan for that area. We don't have one. The bulk of the zoning in there is urban reserve, and I think it's high time that we get together with the property owners and work up with their involvement, work up some type of a plan to determine what the future of that area is, to make sure it does not develop kind of haphazardly as it very well could, and that we figure out how we would like to see it and work towards that goal. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments, reports, requests? I just like to request that we would bring the Walk of Stars and that contract renewal to the council in a study session for us to look at. There were some concerns at the last time it was brought to us, but I think the city has changed. There are a lot of issues that I think warrants the council's scrutiny. In addition, the previous council looked at naming opportunities for street name changes, et cetera, and we never completed that. So, Mr. Douglas, I apologize to you on behalf of the city, but we never completed that process, and I think that's something that we need to revisit, certainly, because we'll have other opportunities and we need a policy and we don't have one. Okay? Okay, we will move on to city manager comments and follow up on requests.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd just like to a note with regard to a couple follow-up requests. In front of you is the report that was requested with regard to tourism, Rocktoberfest, Elvis Weekend, and tourism's vision on special events. That is before you, along with the package of exhibits. Also, Councilmember Fote had asked regarding our minority business policy in terms of procurement, and I'm passing that out to you as well on the city's policy. And that's pretty much governed by both state and federal law. Third, Councilmember Pugnier had asked with regard to, I'll get another one too. Councilmember Pugnier had asked with regard to I-10 and Indian and Gene Autry. The city engineer is finalizing that report, and I'll have that for you on Friday. And Mr. Mills, I believe you had asked for a report regarding the streets in Araby and the city engineer. Well, we plan to have that in your packet on Friday. Thank you. With that, Mr. Mayor, we're ready to proceed with the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to City Council study session topics. Item number 1, fiscal year 2004 through 505 budget review.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if we had a request to move the capital improvement program to the first thing because it's going to be relatively brief, my understanding is, and we could address that first and allow some people to leave.
Sure, that's not a problem.
Okay, do we have a lot of people here?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. What is the main portion of our presentation this evening is with regard to the budget, and there's 4 components. One is the revenue enhancement ideas, as we're all aware that our budget deficit going into our next fiscal year beginning July 1 could be anywhere from 3.8 million to roughly 8, depending upon what happens with the state, et cetera. So there are revenue enhancement ideas, market research and strategic planning ideas to see if in fact there is support in the community for any of these revenue enhancements, capital improvement programs which deal specifically with, we're looking for some guidance on the animal shelter, and 4th, continuation of the budget task force and what their role will be. So that being said, we will move to the capital improvement program, and because there's one specific issue we do want to discuss, and that's with regard to the animal shelter. As you recall, last year we had the discussion with regard to CVAG's centralized animal shelter. City Council had made the determination and given us direction to proceed with our own animal shelter, and that we would keep our shelter and to look for possibilities and ways to build the new shelter that our city requires. As you know, our current shelter is extremely old and in need of repair and or complete a new shelter. What we've done is we've put some dollars into, minimal dollars that have made it workable probably for another year, 2 years. But beyond that, we are going to require a new building. Now, to get there, given the fact of our budget issues, the Friends of the Shelter have come forward and are very interested in a significant fundraising effort to help us with this. And what we'd like to do first is, if we could, just introduce the Friends of the Shelter who are with us this evening. And I would ask Chief Gendron to introduce the members of that group, if you would, please. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to introduce the Friends of the Shelter. It's a nonprofit citizens volunteer organization. It's been established for a while, and it's now a re-energized group. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Doug Kuntz. He would stand. He is the president of the organization. He is a founding member, as a matter of fact, and he's 27 years as a veterinarian. Ann Walkson is also a founding member, and we have Linda Francis. She is the treasurer of the organization, and we have Jacqueline Berman. She is the vice president, and she is in charge of marketing. And last but we have Al Stein. He is the chairperson for he's not really last for the site development, and he has helped us in researching options for the new building. And last but not least is Bill Feingold. He's our chief financial officer, and he is also the chairperson for the fundraising committee. Before the Friends of the Shelter went out into the public, they wanted to be sure that you were aware of their existence and their intentions to go out on behalf of the city to raise money for a new animal shelter. And we'll entertain any questions about Friends of the Shelter.
And if I could note to council, the cost of the new shelter is estimated at a minimum of approximately $3.5 million. And this is where we stand now, and this is the direction that we will be asking from you. Now, certainly you don't need to make this decision now. You probably want to wait till we have the first discussion on the revenue enhancement. But the next step would be to get the actual, some sort of architectural design so we can finalize a cost. Now, we have $90,000 now currently allocated in the shelter line item fund for this ongoing process. We have not spent it yet because we're going to have to need some council direction if you even want to go forward after you understand our total budget scenario. So that will be a question. We have the $90,000 there. Do we want to go ahead with some design and look at site seriously? And in the meantime, the Friends of the Shelter will be doing their fundraising efforts. So that will be the question that we'll pose to you again later on in this meeting. Thank you.
I just have a couple questions. Are the Friends a separate nonprofit, or are they simply working on behalf of the city?
They are a separate non-profit.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Fox.
I have a couple of questions. Where would this include the property, or the shelter would be rebuilt where the shelter exists, or?
We have two options. One, we could rebuild it currently on the current site. Obviously, that reduces the cost of the land. There is a school of thought that that site just is not large enough. However, it could be. And then also we're looking at a couple other sites. One is which is in Demuth Park, sort of close to the wastewater treatment plant. But again, those sites have not been fully explored nor discussed by City Council.
And has the organization looked at the guide dog site? Is that an appropriate site? Because I understand that may be coming up for sale too soon.
Yes, out of the city.
It's outside of the city?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was in the city.
No.
limits. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Punya.
Mr. Reddy, could you please briefly just educate me a little bit further about the process, what occurred previously, the pros and cons of a regional facility, and why we may be looking at our own facility? Just a brief update will help me on this topic.
Sure. In summary fashion, CVAG is building a regional facility which would serve certainly the western part of the valley. City Council looked at that as a possibility, and they felt that for policy reasons that our shelter, although our shelter is not a no-kill facility, we certainly hold our animals much longer to try to adopt them out. And that was one of the sole reasons why Council decided to stay with our own. Also, another factor was that the actual geographical location, which is in Thousand Palms, any resident having to deal with the shelter obviously would have to travel outside the city.
I think that when the county was doing their due diligence, they discovered that they wanted to use Palm Springs and how we handle our animals in our city as the standard for the county. So we would actually have experienced a lower level of care. So the standard of care that we provide, I think, was the number one reason for retaining that service in the city.
I'm not on, but has a process been outlined, because I know this has been a sensitive topic throughout the community through the last several years, how the group will report back to the city council and progress, and fundraising is very competitive and very, very difficult, and the $2 million is a very admirable goal. It's not going to be an easy goal to attain. So I don't want to lose, this is a priority, just saying, oh, they're going to raise $2 million. I guess it's got to be a process that we talk back and forth quite a bit about. And has a lot of that been worked out yet, or is this just sort of the first informational, but it needs to be?
Basically, this is the first informational thing. The group, their first task was to become a nonprofit, and they're well on their way to doing that if they haven't already. That they have. And then second of all, if there's some realistic expectation that in essence we could come up with our portion of the dollars after they raise theirs, which is a fair budget question for some point in the near future.
Okay. Thank you.
Proceeding back, Mr. Mayor, members of council, to item A, And I'll briefly just frame the issue, and then we're going to have a presentation from Tom Kanar, our finance director, and Troy Butzloff is going to assist in this. It's no secret that every city in California is facing significant and serious budget issues with regard to the triple flip, with regard to the whole property tax issue. The question for us is, are we going to have a $3.5 million deficit or a $5 million deficit or an $8 million deficit? Those things are unknown at this time. What we do know is that potentially there's a very significant, and to make these kind of cuts would have a significant drastic effect on our services. So this is the question and the idea of this presentation tonight. We have a certain level of high quality service in our city. The state, as a function of their policy, is shifting the burden of those services and from a shared responsibility as it has traditionally been in California to basically one pretty much where it's up to the city to pay the entire cost of these services. That being said, there's a school of thought that potentially the citizens are not willing to reduce the level of service, and they may be willing or should have the opportunity to decide if they want to share in this cost. So what's before you this evening is a group of revenue enhancement ideas, some of which require voter approval, some require voter approval by majority, some by 2/3, some are not voter approval, some are just administrative actions. So what we hope to do is lay out for you the range of issues and then have a discussion and see if council wants to give us some direction for further investigation to bring back the actual legislation that would trigger any or all of these events. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Tom Kanar, our finance director, and Troy, who will do the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, you have before you a packet of information, and what we tried to do, Troy and I, is summarize the tax potential issues, hopefully in a fairly concise and succinct manner. I think in any discussion of potential revenue enhancements, tax increases, we want to ask some of the questions, or answer the questions, I should say, that are on here. How much money will the tax raise? What are the administrative costs for the city? For the people who have to collect the tax, what's their administrative cost? What about the equitability and fairness of the tax? What kind of effect will it have on competitiveness of Palm Springs businesses? What are the voting requirements? The annual cost per resident, is it a tax-deductible item for people on their state and federal tax returns? The political considerations, how easily can a particular tax or fee increase be sold to the voting public? And the implementation date, how quickly can you get one of these items if the voters do approve it, how quickly can it be put in place to help address our budget deficit? As the city manager mentioned to you, when we presented to you the preliminary forecast for next fiscal year, we were looking at about a $3.8 million budget deficit. That's very preliminary, based on some assumptions of growth in expenses and revenues. I think it's still a reasonably accurate number. We don't have all the preliminary documents back from the departments yet to give you an idea, or a closer idea, closer than that. One of the other things that happened on the March 2nd election was the approval of Propositions 57 and 58. It essentially means that the state is going to borrow money to cover the prior deficit. Where they get the money to pay back that loan, or at least a portion of it, is by taking a 0.25% of the sales tax that the cities normally get. We get 1% of taxable retail sales now. The state would take 1/4 of that. That will cost the city about $1.8 million. The story is that the state will pay that back to us by changing the property tax formula and make the cities and counties whole. I think that will probably happen in this next fiscal year, and I think it would probably happen in the year after that. I'm not at all confident that that will be a continuing policy of the state. But at least in the next fiscal year, I think that's something that we can hope that we won't have to face. There's a variety of other things that the state could do. They have promised that they would continue to backfill the motor vehicle in lieu tax, the car tax. Currently, they're collecting about 1/4 of what they're actually paying out to cities and counties, and they're taking the balance of it from their general fund.
Governor Schwarzenegger has made that a centerpiece, I think, of his current budget proposal, that the cities would be made whole on that. I think that will also continue. Again, what the future holds 2, 3, 4 years down the road is problematical. We will, or we already have lost about $800,000 in the current fiscal year. That's supposed to be paid back in the year 2006. I don't think that's, well, we'll see when we get to 2006 if we actually get paid that.
Although, and I would like to interject, and this puts it in perspective, before this license tax went away, we got the city received $2.7 million every year in vehicle license tax. Since the withdrawal of that and the change, we will receive $900,000, a significant gap. Now, the governor has suggested he will make us whole. As Tom said, it could be years out, but we don't know if it's whole for 1 year or into infinity. So, and it's unlikely that it's a long term, but anyway, that just is one illustration.
Thank you. The one thing that I think is almost certain that will go away is an additional payment or a transfer of property tax money from the cities, and from the city of Palm Springs in this case, to the Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund, essentially a transfer of property taxes from cities to schools. And that saves the state money. That will cost us an additional $500,000, $534,000, I think is the estimate, in the next fiscal year. That's on top of the annual $2.5 to $3 million that the state is already transferring away from us because of changes in the property tax formulas over the last decade or so. But the additional $500,000 is almost a surety to go away. So where we stand now, we're probably looking at a budget deficit of about $4.3 million, which brings us to the discussion tonight on one of the ways to solve that, or to help solve that, is to take a look at increasing taxes. And if I could have Mr. Butzlaff, our Assistant City Manager, discuss some of those proposals.
Thank you, Tom. Members of the City Council. What we've tried to put forward tonight is a list of various local revenue enhancement options for the council to consider. This runs the gamut of everything from parcel-based taxes to tax overrides to special benefit assessments to some of the common things that we do currently, like a document or property transfer tax, business license tax, a 0.25% sales tax increase, and then some innovative things like an emissions tax, which some cities have implemented, and finally something that we recently came across, and that is a 911 emergency communication systems response fee, which is not a tax and doesn't require voter approval and can be implemented by the City Council by resolution. What I'd like to do tonight is simply go through some of these, take questions from council as we go through it, and then we have a list of kind of a summary of the various local revenue enhancement options and what kind of revenue they can generate depending on the type of increase or type of rate that we assess. And then we have some actual case studies that Tom and I have put together, which will kind of go into the mechanics of several of these different revenue enhancement options and what they will mean to the individual property owner in the city of Palm Springs. So with that, we'll just start right off with the parcel tax. The parcel tax is generally allowed under Government Code Section 53970 and 53978. These are levied for specific purposes. For example, they could be levied for public safety, police and fire. They can also be levied for municipal services, which are just general city services. The city of Union City recently proposed this on the March 2nd ballot and actually got it approved. And it does require a 2/3 vote to approve because it is a special tax. So it is somewhat difficult to get approved, but it does allow the city to use it for various specific services, whether it be public safety services, or in some cases, cities have used it for library services, graffiti abatement, undergrounding of utilities, and public recreation. The next type of tax is an excise tax, and currently the City of Palm Springs has several forms of an excise tax. One is our new development tax, which is imposed on every new development that comes into the city. Another form of an excise tax is the business license tax. This can be used for general fund purposes. It only requires a majority vote, and it's pretty much widely implemented, but some of the cities that have used it for special purposes are Vallejo. Vallejo uses it a specific excise tax to fund municipal services, and San Diego recently implemented an excise tax for special business districts in their community. The property tax override is something that the city can also do. This is allowed under the state constitution, Article 13A, and basically we are limited to 1% property tax. But under the property tax override, with a 2/3 vote, we could add an additional 1%, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, for the purposes of paying for debt service on debt issues. So we could use that particular vehicle to pay for debt that the city currently has, and that requires a 2/3 vote. Then there's several different types of assessment vehicles that can be implemented. We range from a benefit assessment district, which can be used for flood control, fire suppression. Many cities use this for streets, curbs, gutters, all the infrastructure stuff. They also use it in some cases for police services. For example, you can use a special benefit assessment to fund specific types of police services. In the example of Inglewood, they're using it to fund gang suppression. You can't use it to generally pay for police services or fire services because that's considered a general service that the city provides. But if it's a special benefit to a certain area of the community or property owners specifically, like the downtown experience, then you could assess that as it benefits those parcels. But you couldn't use it to pay for general police or general fire services. The cities of Redlands, Vista, Anaheim, San Diego all use different forms of the special benefit assessment to pay for various services or infrastructure improvements, and that does require a 2/3 vote. The next type of assessment district we are looking at is a landscape and lighting maintenance district. And back in 1993, the city council actually looked at this. This is generally used to pay for the installation and maintenance of lighting and landscaping, statues, fountains, traffic lights, recreation and playground courts and equipment, and public restrooms. It only requires a majority vote. It follows the guidelines that are established under Proposition 218, and many cities rely on this to pay for general maintenance of their parks, of their beltways, of their landscape medians. Indio, Rancho Mirage, Chino Hills all use this for that purpose, and it, again, requires only a majority vote. The property tax transfer, and I'm going to let Tom explain this because there's some nuances related to this. Tom? Yeah.
This is what has also been referred to as the documentary transfer tax, and I think this came up during the budget task force, or a couple of members of council may have some knowledge or some remembrance of this. Essentially, whenever property is sold in Palm Springs, there's a tax on that. It's $1.10 per $1,000 of the sales price. The city receives half of that, or 55 cents per thousand. The other half of that goes to the county of Riverside. The tax itself is actually administered by the county of Riverside, and they collect it, and we receive it, our portion of it from them. The only other place, the only city I could find that had increased it in recent memory is the city of Riverside, and it's got it's a strange kind of a tax because it was one that used to be local. The state preempted it something like in 1967 or something like that, and said it had to be administered through counties. The city council at the time adopted an ordinance that conformed to that law. If we increased this particular tax, no matter what it might be, only half of the proceeds would come back to the city. The other half apparently needs to go to the county of Riverside, which is a good deal for them, but not so much for us. Okay. The business license tax, this is one that's administered through the city, through the finance department. We charge a tax to all businesses in town. It averages about $100, ranges from a low, I think, of $25 up to, perhaps about, well, the very highest one is about $10,000, but there's very few. That's a Desert Hospital. Very few in that category. Most are in the range of $100 to $200. It hasn't been increased since January of 1988. It would require a vote of the people to increase it, but it only would require a majority vote. And the sales tax, this is one that has come up actually a number of times in conversations over the years. Could we have a city sales tax? And it was always possible, but it was a very cumbersome and difficult process to go through until fairly recently. And some new state legislation would allow the city to increase sales tax, again with the vote of the people. And if it wasn't meant or dedicated for a specific purpose, it would only be a majority tax. If you did want to dedicate it towards a specific service like police safety or fire safety, something like that, that would create a special tax and require a 2/3 vote. It has to be done in increments of 1/4%, and on the next page you'll see where I've done some estimates of what taxes would do. I use the 1/4%. It would be about $1.8 million annually to the city. And do you want to do the admissions tax?
Well, actually, I'm going to go back and do the Melrose tax since I skipped over it.
Okay.
Yes, the Melrose tax is not a special assessment. It's a tax. It doesn't have to be apportioned on the basis of property benefit, but really it's limited to capital improvements. So if we want to build a fire station, you want to build a police station, you want to do storm drain or flood control district improvements, that's what it's primarily used for. The cities of South Lake Tahoe, Antioch, Carlsbad have used this method for funding various capital infrastructure improvements, and it requires a majority vote. The admissions tax, and I have some familiarity with this one because when I was with Indian Wells, we imposed the first admissions tax in the Coachella Valley on the tennis garden at Indian Wells, primarily for the tennis event. And an admissions tax is essentially a charge imposed on individuals for the right or privilege to enter or occupy a seat at a venue or a facility that offers entertainment or provides some sort of special event programming. Cities of Santa Clara, San Mateo, a number of others. David Alshire was telling me that the city of Irwindale assesses it on the speedway there. It can be used for general fund purposes. It requires a simple majority vote. It's a real easy thing to do on entertainment venues simply because you either do it as a flat rate, like 25 cents onto the ticket, or in some cases, like we did in Indian Wells, it's a percentage of the ticket price. So they started out at 3%. It can go up annually by 1% with a maximum cap of 5%. So it's just a percentage added on to the sales price of the ticket. And the last one, which again is not a tax but a fee, is something that we have recently uncovered, and that is the 911 Emergency Communications System Response Fee. This is authorized under the city's basic police powers granted to us by the state constitution, and it essentially allows the city to establish by ordinance a fee on local telephone service subscribers to recover the majority of its costs to develop, improve, maintain, and operate its 911 communications center. It can also be used to expand and upgrade that center. It can be used for mobile communication systems, and it can also be used for alternative 911 systems for backup capability. This is really popular in Northern California. The cities of San Jose, Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Morgan Hill, Palo Alto, Saratoga, San Francisco have all adopted it. It looks like it is starting to move down to the southern part of the state, and cities here, I'm sure, in Southern California will also be looking at it. This particular fee can raise 100% of your cost for 911 services, but what I'm seeing the trend in most of the cities in Northern California who adopted this is that you're usually taking about 75 to 80% of their total cost and applying that fee towards that. And so it kind of, one, it reduces the amount that the subscriber pays for having that service, and secondly, it really kind of mitigates the argument that the city is using it for revenue purposes. It's not really meant to be that. It's meant to use it for cost recovery. And we have some fee models in the back of this report when we get to it that we'll go over and show you what it can actually raise and what the actual assessment on the individual subscriber lines would be on a monthly basis. And with that, that concludes the summary. We could take questions on any of the tax or assessment models that we've mentioned thus far, or we can go right into the potential tax increase summary sheet that Thomas put together and show you what some of these taxes and fees and assessments could potentially generate.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Ms. Fogg.
On the, where you've given the application of these various taxes, are these just examples, or which one of these taxes would generate money that would trigger us having to do something new rather than just exchange these dollars for general fund dollars? I maybe I didn't say that clearly. Like, for instance, on the 911, would that mean that money could only be used for the expansion and upgrade of 911, or could we trade the general fund dollars that now
Yes.
are used for that.
That's correct. You can trade the general fund dollars that are currently used to pay for 911 communications or our 911 dispatch center by assessing this fee to recover those costs.
So are there any of the taxes that, or fees that you're suggesting that would trigger us having to do something new that would increase our budget?
No, these are basically meant to recover or pay for existing costs that the city has.
Okay, good. So that was. And then I just had a question about the business license tax. Is that the same as the business license, or is there an additional tax?
The actual name of it is business license tax. We often just shorten it to
I
business.
just got scared because I didn't pay tax when I had my business license, so I wanted to make sure there wasn't an additional tax.
As long as you've paid your business license, you're okay with us.
Okay, that's good. And then I just wanted to say a couple of things about the admissions tax, because I chaired that committee that was looking at revenue enhancement, and this tax, and I noticed on the next page you've come up with it would cost about $12 per household per year. And I mean, I think that's very reasonable. I was just wondering how you came up with that formula.
Well, what we did is take all of the various venues, and I think, Troy, do we have the that piece of information in here about who would, on the next page, who would be
Page 4.
subject to it? The Annenberg Theater, Camelot Theater, Not Soak City, and a whole variety of other places there. And we did some estimates, gleaning the information from a variety of sources. Not too much of it is directly actually from these businesses, so we had to go kind of indirectly and get the information. I think it's reasonably accurate. The question, though, is, I'm sorry, Ms. Foti, if you could
I was just curious how you came up with the various formulas that gave you what it would cost per household.
in this case, what I assumed is that about half of the total admissions would be from out of town, and that half wouldn't be, and it came out to $12 per household. There's about 23,000 households in Palm Springs, and that's roughly about half of the total that we have here, estimated revenue from that tax.
Okay, and then my last question is, I noticed on the Palm Springs Follies, you have a total of $8,100,000, and that the estimated admissions would be $180,000. I got a little confused by that.
The number of people is 180,000. So we did it two ways, so that if you're...
Okay. I was thinking I was looking at that as dollars, but it's people.
Those are people on that side, and that's if you charge a quarter
I thought
per
that
ticket
was-
or a
okay.
percentage of the ticket, right?
All right, that wasn't clear. It looked like that was dollars. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Mills.
On the second sheet, which is not part of the matrix, is timeshare occupancy tax. And how does that requirement fit into the first sheet? In other words, is there a voter approval required?
That's a difficult question to answer at this point. The timeshare occupancy tax is actually a tax that's on the city's books right now. I think there's some question, though, as to whether it meets all of the Proposition 218 requirements, Proposition 62, which put restrictions on taxes. And the city attorney may want to weigh in on it, but my recommendation would be that it would be placed before the voters for approval if council decided to go down that road. It's currently on the books. We're not collecting it because of the legal uncertainties.
One of the other items that I think we should look at, and I think perhaps maybe the newer council members might like an understanding of the current utility tax we have, how it's administered, how it can be raised, how it can be altered, and how that has to be handled. And I know you know all that, Tom.
Well, certainly, we didn't put the utility users tax on here, but that could be, it's another general vote kind of tax. It would require, whatever percentage the council decided to place before the voters. We could give you estimates. It's roughly about $1 million per percent. So the tax is currently 5% on electric, gas, and telephone usage. And that would be at the council's option. But since it had been on the ballot fairly recently, I think the thought of staff was that maybe that wasn't one that we wanted to revisit quite so soon.
Okay, but I think it's worth putting on the list so we can look at all our options. So,
For informational purposes.
okay.
Okay.
Tom, if you want to present the summary of the potential tax
I had one
increases.
other question.
Yes, Mr.
Or clarification. On the Mello-Roos, I believe Mr. Butzloff said that it could only be used for fire protection facilities, but I believe you can actually, some jurisdictions have actually used Mello-Roos for services, for fire, and for public safety, fire and police.
They have, and I think what we're going to have to do on those particular issues is look at whether or not it has a Prop 218 implication, which would necessitate the 2/3 vote requirement, because it becomes special at that point. In other words, it may take it into that special category, and I think we need to look at whether or not there is a 2/3 vote implication.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mills.
Troy, on that, I was going to bring it up later, but since Mike got into it, I'll ask. That Mello-Roos tax, how is that imposed? Is that on new development only?
I don't pretend to be an expert on Mello-Roos, and if Tom or
Well, who does
the city
pretend to be the
attorney
expert then?
want to chime in here, by all means do so. No, this would be it could be imposed simply on new development, but it could also be imposed citywide on all parcels within the city. So yeah, it's, I think, a choice that the council would make, whether they wanted to impose it upon simply new development as new development is built, or do they want to extend it to all parcels within the community?
Okay, thank you.
And how is that distinguished from the parcel tax?
Well, besides the fact it's spelled different, no, one is a specific purpose tax, that would be the parcel tax, whether it's being used for public safety, whereas the Mello-Roos is more for general services. That's why the vote requirement's a majority versus the 2/3 majority that a parcel tax requires.
Mello-Roos tax is also a lot higher than the parcel tax. I think you'd find that that would be a much higher percentage.
Are there any other questions? Continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The page that we have here that's labeled potential tax increases, what I did is take the various categories here and just made some assumptions, and obviously these are just for illustrative purposes only and not meant to be recommendations at this point. But if we had a parcel tax, or even if you had a Mello-Roos or some of the other benefit assessments, and you made it relatively even among all the parcels in Palm Springs, and I said $100 for this particular one, it would be per parcel. Typically, there's a formula that's created that spreads the total amount that's to be raised across all these parcels, and Troy will get into that detail a little bit later in our presentation. The annual revenue, if you did $100 per parcel, would be about $3.2 million in the city. We'd have to go through and have an assessment engineer come in and actually tell us how many parcels we have and update the information. The annual administration costs, I put $60,000 on here. That's probably on the high side. I think once we got the district formed, it probably wouldn't cost quite that much. But just to be on the safe side, there would be some fairly significant cost annually to do that. And so the net to the city, and of course the average cost per household would, unless you owned several homes or several parcels within the city, but the average would be about $100 per. If we...
Yes.
I'm sorry.
When you look at the parcel, how would that affect commercial and multifamily?
Mr. Mayor, if we could hold that question
Okay.
until Mr. Butzloff gets into the details of how we do it, it might be easier to handle it all at one
No
time.
problem.
So, thank you. The property transfer tax, or the documentary transfer tax, as we sometimes call it, and we talked about this, or I did a moment ago. If we increased it, it's currently $1.10, and if we doubled it to $2.20, so the new increased rate would be another $1.10. It's per $1,000 of sales price. Under the current level of sales in Palm Springs, it would raise about $500,000 a year, or at least it would cost the people who are buying homes or selling them $500,000. However, the city would get only about half of that, and I showed the rest as a cost, or the net to the city of only $250. Again, it would be $110 per $100,000 of selling price. A business license tax, if you increased it by 30%, would raise the average license about $30 per year. Some people would see much larger increases, but the average would be about that. And it would raise in total about $234,000. And again, we haven't increased that one since 1988. The admissions tax we talked about already, 25 cents a per ticket charge, would raise about $700,000. There would be some administrative costs in collecting that, probably net us about $685,000. I'm guessing about half of that from out-of-town visitors attending events in Palm Springs, the theater, movies, things like that. And so about half of that would accrue or be paid by households. I'm guessing about $12 per household per year. New development tax was last increased in 1985. It is currently 40 cents per square foot of new development. If we took it up to 60 cents per square foot, or another 20 cents, again, under the current building that we have going on, that would raise about $450,000 per year. That would increase the cost of a 2,000 square foot building by $400. Sales tax, if we took it up 0.25%, would raise about $1,850,000. There would be some administrative cost the state charges us for collecting the sales tax. There would also be some cost for businesses in Palm Springs to change computers, change tax rates, and so forth, and also then to report it. I just took a guess at that one, that it would be some fairly minor amount, because they're all reporting sales taxes already, but it would be some cost there. And again, guessing, use the same kind of a formula, Ms. Fote, that I did on the admissions tax. About half of it paid by households. I'm guessing about $40 per year. The emergency 911 calls, if we increase that or added that, it would be $1 per phone line. It would raise about $1.2 million per year and would cost $12 per phone per year. The property tax debt service, so essentially what we would do is take some of the city's existing debt services, bond issues, ask the voters to approve those debt services to be, the money to pay them to be raised on the property taxes. And you may see, if you've looked at your property tax bill recently, there's debt service overrides on there from the Desert Water Agency and the school district for existing bond issues. And the recently passed bond issue from the College of the Desert will be on, I presume, next year's tax bill. Anyway, if the city added a 0.08% on assessed valuation, that would raise a net of about $4.1 million. It would cost $80 per $100,000 assessed value. So if you had a house that was worth $300,000, it would cost you $240 a year. And the timeshare occupancy tax, the law in the books right now says $4 per week. If we took it back to the voters, that could be some different dollar amount. That $4 was arrived at in 1984, I believe. At $4 a night, with the existing timeshares that we have, it would be about $800,000 per year. It would cost the owner of an interval, $28 per year. And as Mr. Mills pointed out, the utility users tax, which is not on your list, but if you increased it for each 1%, would raise about $1 million per year for the city. And I'm guessing it would add about $20 to $30 per year for the average household. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Ponier.
I just have a first question. It's just an overarching question on the whole topic, really. Compared to our neighbors, are we considered a high-tax city right now? I know when we went through the development fee in the last couple of months, we found out that, our fees are relatively low, and we've gone through that process. So just as an overarching question, where are we compared to our neighbors?
Well, we did a study when the utility users tax question came up on the ballot a couple of years ago, or a couple of elections ago now. And we're pretty close. We're right about in the middle in the Coachella Valley in terms of taxation. We're not the lowest, we're not the highest. We have a utility users tax, but other cities had safety assessment districts and things like that, or parkways maintenance districts that add considerable amounts on their property tax bill, and we don't have any of those, or some very minor ones actually. But I'd say we're about average for the cities, and obviously if we increase taxes some larger extent and the other cities didn't, we might move up on that list.
As you discuss, I'm sure with your colleagues, are they all considering potential increases like this?
Well, some cities, are in a better situation than others. I think, especially depending on what the state does to cities, that this is going to be more and more a common exercise among cities in California.
And I might add, Councilman, in the March 2nd election, there was over 24 parcel-related taxes on the ballot for various jurisdictions throughout California, primarily to fund public safety services. Out of those, I would say 9 out of 10 of them were defeated by the voters.
Ms. Foat.
Yeah, I have a question about the sales tax, because that is what you said earlier, what the state is taking away. So is that not a wash, or?
Well, the current sales tax rate for all of Riverside County is 7.75%, and the city receives 1%, or portion of that, or roughly 1/8 of the total. What the state is doing is taking our revenue away, so the tax that people pay doesn't change at all, unless we increase the sales tax rate for the city of Palm Springs via this mechanism. What they're doing is saying, okay, the city of Palm Springs gets $7 million a year in sales tax. We're going to take 1/4 of that, roughly $1.8 million, and use it to pay our bonds off. We're going to give, this is the state talking, we're going to give that money back to the cities, or to the city, via an increase in property taxes. And it's kind of like, take it away, put it back in, take it away, put it back in. And I know it gets a little confusing, but this doesn't just, they're not playing with the rate. They're taking away the split, or the way the total tax is split up among cities and the state.
And so if we were to increase that 25%, we would get that fully, that would go in, come back to us?
Yes, that's my understanding, that all of that would come back to us, yes.
I'd like to expand on that question a little bit. And first, I'd like to thank you both for the very impressive presentation here. I don't know if you're answering these questions truthfully or not, just making stuff up, but so far it's impressive. We'll check the numbers later.
We're just pretending.
To expand on what Jenny was asking was, can you go maybe down this list quickly and give an idea as to what, if any of these, are sort of insulated from the state just taking the money like they've been doing, as opposed to everything here is just like they could just come and say, okay, you raise your tax, 1%, we want 1%, we're going to take it.
Well, the sales tax is probably one that they could come back in and perhaps do what Ms. Foat is, I think, concerned about, that they would say, oh, give us a piece of that also. That's a possibility. So far, they haven't come in and asked for any of the a parcel tax, any that I'm aware of, any of the special assessments. I think of all of the ones on the list there, the only ones that would be the only one that they might have, or at least have taken in the past, the sales tax, because it's state administered, and so it's kind of easy for them to get to.
I will add, however, I think that there may be some threat in the near future on the 911 fee, simply because I think the state is going to look at that as being potentially a tax, and could come back and say, through either some voter initiative, that this is going to require a vote of the people. Right now, that doesn't appear to be the case. Again, it's allowed under the police powers granted to cities, and so we can impose it. But I think as more and more cities enact that particular fee by ordinance, I think it's going to raise the attention of some of the taxpayer advocacy groups out there, and they may challenge that. There's enough legal opinion out there on the cities who have enacted this fee that I think gives sufficient justification for its creation and imposition, but I think you're going to see a trend as more cities look at this fee as a potential way of offsetting some of their 911 dispatch costs, probably a challenge to that.
And
Mr.
if
Reddy.
I couldn't mention, the general fund subsidizes the communications dispatch center. Those were set up to be paid for by themselves by the actual users on the phone lines. So in essence, that is one area the general fund is subsidizing where it should not be. I think traditionally council hasn't gone there on this because of the utility users tax, but given the situation, this would be a very legitimate way to fund that operation.
Mr. Ponier.
Troy and Tom, I'm curious to learn a little bit more about the property transfer tax. Obviously, Riverside County's got a vested interest in receiving half of it. Is the $1.10 per thousand, I know it here, is it a standard rate? Have other communities been raising that rate?
When it came up before the Budget Task Force, the only other one, because I did a search with the finance officers across the state, the only other place that I found that raised it was the city of Riverside. And they did it like in 1991 or somewhere around there. And again, they also had $1.10 at the time. They increased it to $2.20. It's been in place since then. And so they doubled what they got, but the county also got a like increase.
Because as a rapidly appreciating market like we have, that may even be a conservative number there.
In terms of the total amount that it would raise, that's correct. I mean, if we had a lot more sales, and obviously the selling prices go up, and they have gone up, yeah, it would raise more money. That's correct.
It's also something that's actually negotiable between seller or buyer, so it's not necessarily in the contract nailed to one particular party. Thank you.
Mr. Mills.
Mr. Mayor, Tom or Troy or anybody, if you or we and or the voters were to impose a tax, any of these we're talking about, they become a permanent tax and repealable how?
Well, it's up to how we design, I guess, the enabling ordinance to instill the tax. Some taxes have a 5-year sunset and have to be renewed every 5 years. Other taxes are indefinite until repealed by the voters.
But I mean, the taxes that we're looking at here, I mean, are all these a continuing tax, or any of these as subject to the 5 years, or do you write that into the tax? So you could impose a parcel tax for 5 years,
Correct.
and then after 5 years it went away.
And many cities use that approach because they want to give voters some certainty as to when this tax will either be rescinded, or at least it'll be brought back to the voters for them to reauthorize the collection of it. That way it gives them some certainty that this is not a tax that's going to go on indefinitely.
That is,
Ms. Foat.
that is the case with the current utility tax, isn't it? That we have a time on that? Or is
Not after the
that
last vote.
permanent now? The last time we voted on it is permanent.
Yes, it had been temporary before.
Okay.
Mr. Mills.
The current utility tax, as I understand it, is there's no sunset clause on it. We did lower it by 0.5%, which went into parks and, we lowered 0.5% and we put a fixed percentage into Parks and Rec. Tom, yeah.
Let me clarify that. Yeah, it was lowered temporarily by 0.5% to 4.5%, and then a couple of years ago went back to the voters to authorize it going back up to 5%. But we were careful to couch that to still make it a general fund tax so that it didn't require the 2/3 vote. The understanding between the council at the time and the voters was that extra money, about $400,000 a year, for the 0.5% would be used for parks and recreation and library projects. But there is no absolute requirement that the council spend it on that. It's just a moral commitment.
Because that was an advisory vote.
No, that was an actual When it increased the rate to 5%, that was a real vote.
There was some advisory vote on that.
Excuse me, you're right. That was an advisory vote, and then I believe it was challenged after that, and it passed at that time, so it was in effect validated.
Okay. Maybe this is a question for David. To raise or lower the utility tax, does that require a vote?
Yes. And your
Majority vote.
right, because and that's why we didn't want to allocate it to a specific purpose. If you set it aside for a purpose, that's when you trigger the 2/3 requirement. And in simple terms, whatever the process is to create a tax, it can be rescinded, modified by that same sort of process. Even if you put in like a 5-year sunset clause, if in year 3 somebody wanted to do a measure to repeal it, the thing is the issue is how it gets on the ballot. And it either gets on the ballot because the council puts it on the ballot or the initiative process. So if the council isn't willing to put it on the ballot, then it can still get there, but only through the initiative process.
If the current utility, say we did not have a utility tax, what would the process be to impose a utility tax?
The council can put any measure as an initiative. The council can initiate it, and then it's enacted by law or by the voters. And so the way of getting a utility tax on the ballot is to prepare the measure and then for the council to vote to put it on at the next election.
And and it would be a majority vote because it would be a general fund subsidy or whatever you want, tax. Okay. But currently, we do have one, and it can only, that tax rate can only be raised or lowered by a vote.
Or eliminated.
Or eliminated by the voters.
Thank you.
Mr. Reddy, initially when we had this discussion on the budget, we came up, what was the reason that we came up with these different revenue generating ideas? To address what?
The issue is threefold. One, we knew that we were going to have a $3.5 to $3.8 million deficit, structural deficit going in because of the increase of PERS due to the stock market over the last couple of years is one. Two, the triple flip, if you will, which is the governor's proposal on the property tax. And three, the motor vehicle license change that has again reduced our revenue roughly from $2.7 million a year to $900,000 a year. Now again, we don't know if that will be backfilled or not. So if all three of those things come into play, all three co-conspire to give us a deficit of roughly $8 million. We're working right now on the assumption we're going to have a $4 million deficit, which is the first and least onerous deficit, because we're going to have some modicum of faith that the state won't leave us out there hanging. Now, we're preparing for the $4 million, but again, as we move through the budget process, we'll have more information and we may have to take some other action. That's why we need to deal with this revenue idea now, because it's so long-term out in the future. You have to make this decision by August the 6th to get it on the November ballot. However, even then, we may not collect some of these dollars for 6 months into the next fiscal year. So even if this is successful, and it's a big if, we're still going to have a gap, which we're going to have to decide how to cover in the meantime.
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Folt.
I would assume that we would be doing some major talks with the citizens regarding these taxes, and would expect that we probably should have some discussion after we kind of talk about it with the citizens, and would like to hold some open forums for them to come. But on the other hand, we also need to, at some point, look at the list of cuts, and I'd like to see at some point if nothing happened here, what would we have to cut? And how would you get to meet that best case scenario of the 4.3? You have a lot more faith in the government and the state than I do. I'm thinking it's going to be higher than 4.3, but I think I would also like to see what would happen to our city if we did not implement anything here and we had to take $4.3 million out of our budget.
You raise a good question. Understanding of the backdrop of that is last year we cut $1.7 million out of our budget. That translated and manifested in about 18 positions being eliminated, and we did that so it was seamless and transparent to the citizens in the service, as not to create doomsday scenarios. We are in the process of formulating a deficit reduction plan in the event that these revenues do not take place. But again, not to create a doomsday scenario. There's not a whole lot of places in city government to cut at this point where it would be transparent. Additional cuts at this level, even at the $4 million minimum level, will probably result in reduction of services.
David, could you, once again, you did it before in January, but nail down the timeline when things are happening here regarding the budget? And
we will end this fiscal year, which is June 30, pretty much balanced. Tom, can you confirm or deny that?
I want you on record.
I think at this point it looks like we'll be pretty close to balanced, within a couple of $100,000 one way or the other.
Okay. So the issue is July 1 moving forward. Part of the problem is it's like a huge ship trying to turn it. It takes a long effort and time to turn. And so if we have a reasonable idea that these revenues will not occur, then we'd need at least 6 months lead time to make the kind of corrections we would have to without running a deficit.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mills.
I think as Tom reported to us several months ago too, this is not a one-year problem. This is at least a two-year problem. And the numbers we saw from Tom, which we understand were preliminary, if I remember correctly, the very first time you did this for us, you were looking at around 3.5 this year, and now it's all up to 4.3, and you were looking at next year at 6 or 7. Is that pretty close?
Well, when you say this year, remember we're talking about fiscal 04-05,
Correct.
and it was around $3.5 million or somewhere in the very earliest projections I think that I gave to council. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I don't think it was that high for 05-06. It looked like the expenses were starting to level off, especially the cost of pension benefits and health insurance, at least to the point where revenue growth should be able to cover that. It might have been about $4.5 million, if I'm remembering my numbers correctly, Mr. Mills.
I remember it being more. The second year impact was higher than the first year impact.
It was higher, but I'd have to. I'm guessing at this point now, so I'd have to go back and take a look at those projections.
And the point I'm making is kind of where the city manager was headed. Is that though it may take us 6 months to implement this and start to see any dollars, we are looking at not just this fiscal year, this upcoming one, but the next one is being potentially equally as bad. We are doing very well in planning and building right now. What we're generating is why our budget may balance this year, but I mean that's an unknown, and you cannot gamble on an unknown, I don't think. And I think we need to realize that this is something we're doing for the future. I don't think any one of us want to impose any tax on anybody, but there are, it's an overlying impact that's going to affect the future, and we definitely need to look at, maybe we can Band-Aid it this year, but we sure won't be able to next year. You can only cut so much, and gambling on it coming in is a difficult thing to do.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
To
Mr.
continue on that thought, I did appreciate whenever you did that first budget thing where you had out, I think, 3 years projected. I think that we can't look at this 1 year in a vacuum, and because not only can some things get worse, they can also get better. And from a standpoint, if we look to start cutting services and cutting personnel, and we have maybe a 1.5-year problem, that could be a huge mistake too. So we want to make sure that we understand that we anticipate that the PERS costs may be going down and some of these other problems may be dropping, so that if and when we have to make some decisions to cut next year or this year, that we don't do that in a vacuum and then find out 2 years later we're out hiring again. I think that would be a huge mistake. I thought that was a very disturbing fact that was quoted, that 9 out of 10 of the initiatives from anyone who's looking to raise taxes failed. So I think we have to at least assume there's a very good likelihood that these will fail, and we have to plan for the cuts, as Ms. Fote said. And I believe that we need to also look at these taxes in light of what our neighbors are doing. If we have an emissions tax and Cathedral City doesn't, are we going to lose all our theater business to just a mile down the road? And this morning I was with the chief at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast, and I'm a liaison to that group, and I give a little very short, brief update on council. And I was discussing basically this agenda, and I didn't get a chance to ask all the questions I wanted, but I asked for a raise of hands. There's about over 100 people in the room. How many people felt that they were undertaxed? And it was unanimous. Not one person raised a hand. Now, I was a little bit in jest, and I didn't get to answer the question, well, how many people would like to see the services cut, which should be obviously in the entire package. But I think that there wasn't anybody that even moved to raise their hand about that they weren't already overtaxed. And so this could be a very hard sell.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor.
I agree, and to what Ms. Fote said, we owe the citizens, in my mind, a session on potential savings from current operations. I think as you look at this, you must have that as part of the budget picture. And that was my initial question on the timeline. As you said, these revenue enhancements are such an issue that we start giving some guidance. Because as Mike mentioned, we go through this process and boom, November, it's no, no, no. And as difficult a choice as that is, I think for us to do our homework and, we need to go through that process.
Ms. Fote.
Yeah, I think that was, in that recent survey that we did, the city survey, that was one of the disappointing parts of that survey for me, that we asked questions and we didn't ask about the consequences. We asked a question in that survey, if I remember, and I'll paraphrase it, was, do you want to see services cut to the city? And of course, the overwhelming answer was no. But we didn't follow it up with a question of, would you be willing to pay a small increase in a particular tax to not have the services cut? And so that's why I feel really strongly that when we need to go to the community, and we need to go with them with both things in hand. I mean, do you want to see 20 less police officers on the street, or do you want to pay, $40 per household per year? So I think that those are the kinds of things that when we do the presentation to the citizens, we need to have both sides of the picture.
Your turn. I won't push the button.
No. Go ahead. I've waited this
Go
long.
ahead.
I'm just about to burst. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that, and I agree with what was said, but also, if you look historically at what the citizens of Palm Springs have done tax-wise, they've supported tax increases that the city council has proposed over the years, and they've done it, I think, because the city council has taken the time to really evaluate them, explain them, and make people realize that it's not arbitrary, and it's not it's something that has to be done to maintain the quality of life that all of us are used to. And I think we have overwhelmingly won those elections. They have not been like 51-50 or anything like that. They've been a 2/3 vote when we didn't need a 2/3 vote. And I think that's very important. And I think that's attributable to what the efforts the council has made and the community in getting the word out and helping people to understand what it's all involved. And I think that we can do that. And I think when we're looking at this, that we take or make sure that, you know, we're not arbitrary, that we're very specific, that we're covering what we see to be our shortfalls in the future, and that we take steps towards our controlling efforts to cut our dollars back, and that we don't make that we don't spend money that we don't have, that we set an example and show the city, the citizens of the city, that we are first in line and stepping up to the line to take care of this issue ourselves best we can, and that we need help also. So that's a point I think we, as a council, need to emphasize. I don't think we have done a good job of it the last few months, I think that though that we will have some further opportunity as we get more information back in this budget process. I know the three of you are going through the budget process your first time. It's a real education. And that we need to keep that in mind as we go through that process as well. But I do feel overridingly that the citizens of this city know what we have. They appreciate what we have here, and when the council presents it right and makes people understand it, that they do step up to the line. And we have had citizens groups that have been really taken charge of these items before, have done excellent jobs, and I sure hope we can encourage that to happen again as well. So, don't anybody ask any questions because it's the mayor's turn.
Thank you. It's a little interesting to me how we've been talking about this for an hour, and we really haven't said what I believe the true issues are. Look, we made cuts for the 1.7 million, 18 positions. And basically, we made as many cuts without affecting direct services administratively. If we start to cut again, it's going to go to the areas where 50% of our budget is, and that's police and fire. Now, historically, when we've talked about this with our utility tax, I think you're right. I think we did an exceptional job with making sure that we educated the community. But the fact is, they expected this to be fixed. And here we are again with this issue. So I think it would be very difficult to try to use the utility tax to address this issue. And the fact is, over the past couple of years, we haven't talked as much, I think, as we should have about the real issues. And we've stated them, but I don't know if people really understand what's happened there and why the costs are so high. And I think that whatever we do, that we're going to have to try to fix this once and for all for the citizens. And I think that that's what they expect and that's what they deserve. It's not so much just looking at what's going to perhaps get us out of the budget deficit, because that's one part. But we're still going to have to deal with these ongoing issues that we have to address with the increasing cost of our employees. We can't run from that. So I think whatever decisions that as we look at, I think we need to look at those costs and see what that's going to cost us projected out, so that we won't be back here in 2 years or 3 years. First of all, I think it's demoralizing for employees every few years to feel like their positions and their jobs are at stake. And of course, any and everything that a person wants to say about, people who work for the government, well, they get to say that and kind of take out frustrations with the federal government on the local level, which is unfortunate because I think very often we do that. But I think in our community, even though most educational bonds fail, not here, because we go out and we educate the community and we tell them what the real issues are. And I think this is going to be a tremendous challenge for us because personally, I like the fact that we are a full-service city, and I think most of our citizens like and enjoy the fact that we are a full-service city. But now I think we're at a point where we have to say to the citizens of our community, if you want this Cadillac level of services, this is what it's going to cost. But this is what you can expect to receive as a result of what you're paying. And I want to thank the staff for this information, but I think we really need to look at and just let the people know that there's no way that we can continue without cutting those services. This is not a threat. We're not playing with this issue. These are the facts. And I know that historically people said, oh, well, every time, we hit a problem in the city, they hit you with the threat, well, you're not going to have police and fire. Well, they may have felt that at a time then present, but we're facing a different situation today. And I think all of our citizens need to be aware of the fact we cannot continue like this. So we're going to have to examine as many alternatives as possible, and we're going to have to say to them directly, we need your help in order to, and we can't just make this decision. That's why I really appreciate the fact that all the council members are saying, let's put this out to the citizens. The citizens of Palm Springs, you will have to make the decision of what type of services we will have in this city for the future. And I believe that they want the best. But it's going to cost us, and we're going to have to figure out what's the most effective way to get those services and to pay for them in a way that provides the least impact on each of us individually.
Done?
Not quite, but go ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we could go through some of these revenue models, but I think at this point, because it seems like the council's on the same thought pattern relative to community involvement, kind of engaging the community on some of these issues, maybe at this time we might want to spend some time on item B, which is the market research and strategic planning consultant. One of the things we saw in the March 2nd election is that those cities that went through an exercise of finding out from their community what tax measures they would support, what dollar level they would be willing to pay, what are the issues that they're willing to fund. Those measures were successful because the elected bodies in those agencies picked the right tax measure to put before the voters. Cities that didn't do that kind of research or scientific polling of their community failed in their tax measures. One of the things we want to recommend to council is with this multitude of different tax measures that we've presented tonight, we need to focus in on what are the most appropriate vehicles to raise the revenues that we need to offset our structural deficit situation. I mean, you could throw 1, 2, 3, 4 of these measures out there, but which one is really going to be the one that residents of this community will support? And then what is the maximum dollar level the residents will be willing to pay for those services? As you mentioned, Mayor, the Cadillac of services that we want to be able to provide our constituents. We have with us tonight Rick Davis from the Davis Group, who assisted the city on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, measures U, V, W, and X, if you remember those 2 years ago. Rick was very instrumental in helping the city with its public educational campaign, in defending the city on those positions. He has with him Steve Kinney, who is a pollster with the firm of Public Opinion Strategies. And if the council would like, we can talk a little bit about that strategy and how they would go about doing a more scientific, quantitative research method to find out what the residents of the community might be willing to support. And from there, we can then build the model or the case, so to speak, for the November ballot.
Yes, Ms. Folt.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know these two gentlemen, but so this is no offense, but I also want us to remember that during that period of time, there was a major outcry from the citizenry that the council approved $125,000 to do that. And so I think when we're looking at this, I also want us to think about and talk about the continuation of the budget task force to see if we could maybe take some of that responsibility and give it to the budget task force. And I agree, we do need some direction from the citizens, and how we get that direction, I think can happen in a number of ways. But I want us to remember that there was a major outcry about the money spent the last time.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. We are here this evening at the request of city staff with a proposal to provide some public opinion research as well as some strategic planning services to the city in relation to the revenue enhancements you all have just been discussing. As Troy mentioned, we were involved a little less than 2 years ago on the, what did you call them? And we provided the public opinion or the public education effort that was associated with those ballot measures on behalf of the city. In addition to those, we've done a number of these kind of issues throughout Southern California. In the last few years, we've done work in the cities of Pomona, Garden Grove, Norwalk, Fontana, Long Beach, and we're currently doing research and planning in a number of other local communities right now in Southern California for local agencies, water agencies, and local government entities. You have numerous options before you, and it's appropriate and pragmatic, as Ms. Fote said, to find out what the community thinks and to get the community's opinion and understand what types of revenues they potentially will support, what types they will not support, and at what levels. And that's a key, is what's the potential levels where support may diminish. Some of these will require 2/3 votes, some simple majorities. I think what Troy was pointing out that did not pass this last March election, most of those, if not all, were requiring a 2/3 vote. I don't know exactly which ones would have passed had they been a simple majority, but I think many of them would. So this is a key part of your decision. Your decision as you move forward to put an issue on the ballot, you must look at the fact that you don't want to put something on that the public will not support and potentially would fail. You may only get one chance at this. As Mr. Mills said, you've got an opportunity here, but you have to go out and you have to educate the voters and the citizens and go forward, and you may only get one chance at this. We would propose conducting, to start this process out, a telephone survey of 300 randomly sampled voters to test the levels of potential support for the various options you have here on the table, and potentially some others may arise as we move forward. We'll work closely and in depth with the staff and the city in developing that questionnaire. Once the survey is fielded, the results are in, we'll provide a very detailed report, presentations as needed, and develop strategic recommendations and a strategic plan with an idea of how you should potentially move forward with this, looking at your August deadline to put something on the November ballot. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council? A question. When you talk about conducting a stratified random sample, would it be based upon perhaps which tax that we looked at? Because some questions might be geared toward commercial property, or would you just do it across the board?
Well, presuming that it would be something that would go before all the voters, that we would sample we would do a propensity selection probably, because we want to sample people who actually vote, so, because that'll be a key element. So beyond that cut, we would probably just randomly look at voters in the city of Palm Springs. Because I think everything you have before you, we got a detailed look at this today, goes before the general voters. It's not like only a parcel owner, a parcel tax, a vote by a parcel owner, as I understand it.
Okay, I just want to make sure
We
that
would
you-
also have breakouts so that you could tell a person who owns a business. You could tell that. We would have a random sampling of the high propensity voter for a presidential election is who we would look at, but you would have a breakout so that I could say, if you said, well, those people that own a business, where are they? Those people that own their own homes, where would they be?
Okay, that was my concern.
And we can give you demographics based on components of the city, although with a sample of 300, some of the smaller breakouts will be maybe anecdotal and not statistically, strong, but.
I know we utilized their services in the past. We were looking at 4 different ballot issues. What would be the cost of this?
Well, they have presented a proposal basically to do the telephone survey. They're estimating $18,000 to $22,000, and then their strategic planning and management fee would be an additional $3,000. So for the 300 random sampling that they would do, that would be a range of $18,000 to $22,000.
Ms. Foat?
Is that a random, when you say a random sampling of 300, that would be out of how many that you would call that would be your final number, 300?
Yes, ma'am. What we will do is we will talk to 300 randomly picked people within the high propensity voters. You have total registration around 23,000, probably of high propensity voters. You would have of that would be about 55 to 60% of that 23,000. We would take a random sampling of 300 people from that. In order to talk to 300 people, we'll end up dialing close to 900 people. But we'll only have completed the survey with 300.
And can you explain to me how you come up with the 300? Will tell us how everybody in the city will feel.
It's a statistical package. It's a statistical thing that at a 95% confidence rate with a plus or minus margin of 5.66, that this 300 will statistically represent the population as a whole. And where we get the list, we get it from the voter files. We don't just do random digit dial that says, ask you if you're a registered voter and ask these questions. We actually take it from basically it comes initially from the county clerk's office. We then have the fact of whether you're registered to vote. We have the fact of how often you vote. All that's reported. We take the random sampling from that list, and then we have found it to be statistically valid at a 95% confidence and a plus or minus 5.66.
Thank you.
Again, we were just simply presenting this to the council tonight, seeking direction. If this is something of interest to the council, we bring it back at your next available council meeting to have some further dialogue and potentially a contract before you to do this. This was our best guess at how we can ascertain which of the tax initiatives that we have outlined tonight would have the greatest amount of support from constituents or voters in the community, so that we would put our best effort forward come November of this year, so that we didn't load the ballot up with just a number of different tax initiatives, because ultimately we need to select the one that we feel is going to be the best effort and is going to have the most support and is going to have the best chance of achieving the kind of revenues that we want to achieve.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Reddy?
What I think I heard council say is that if you wanted to do this piece here, what I heard was that council was interested in a more grassroots opinion or idea of what the city citizens are saying, a series of budget sessions. But I would start that with we have a proliferation of our neighborhood organizations are becoming very strong. What I will do is I will ask immediately each of those neighborhood organizations to put this issue on their next agenda for their sessions. Staff will attend those and have a discussion and try and get a sense of where they're at from those focus kind of meetings. Then maybe we could have a series of budget meetings at study session times in addition to whatever this firm may be able to do on the survey research. That would just be a suggestion. Thank you.
Mr. Mills.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. My question, Mr. Davis, is timing. If we'll be starting development of our budget, Tom, in the next few weeks, correct? And is the timing better for a survey like this once the council has put forth where it is from a budget standpoint, so that information is available to put into the to this survey, or not?
Well, I think one of the things I noted you brought up was the idea of putting the cuts out on the table, and you did a very good job of that 2 years ago when we were faced with those ballot measures that would have cut the UUT and reallocated the TOT, that you put forward an exact package of here's what would be affected. So if you planning your budget and the council doing some additional work in relation to those kind of issues first would be very helpful as part of the survey research. If part of the survey research talked about potential revenue enhancements, it also does have to talk about what the results are if the enhancements don't happen and what the cuts would be. So yes, that would be very helpful to have those, and if a little bit of time is needed to do that, I think that time is probably available. You obviously have a timeline of August, but many things have to happen between now and then to make that work, and obviously a lot of public education probably needs to go into this. So at the same time, the sooner the better, I think.
Mr. Buslaw.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, maybe I can help address Mr. Mills's question, and that is some of this work may require the city to hire an assessment engineering firm to help us better identify the parcel information. In the fee models or the revenue models that I've provided to you, I'm using 1993 land data because that's the only data we have currently available to us. So in order to ascertain what the actual assessment may be on an individual parcel basis, and whether we use the equivalent dwelling unit model, which is one form of applying an assessment, or a square footage model, we will need to have a firm assist us in defining those parameters. And that could be a several-month process, let alone just the process of selecting a contractor. So my concern is, with an August 6th deadline to put an initiative on the November ballot, we're going to have to back from that the amount of time it's going to take to devise a model that the council will ultimately be able to put before the voters, and that's going to, of course, take their assistance in determining what that model is. So if it's a parcel tax for public safety, that's one approach. If it's a community-wide maintenance district, that's a different approach. And so those two types of vehicles, they're different, and they're going to require some assistance from a consultant to help us identify what the actual parcel information is.
So we would have to do that first.
No, I would suggest that we do the surveying first to find out which of the models, fee models, or revenue enhancement ideas the council will be willing to put on the ballot based upon the survey instrument and what it shows is supported by the community. Because ultimately, we want to select one to have an assessment engineer do the work that's going to be necessary to figure out what the actual assessment cost on a parcel by parcel basis is going to be. You don't want to have one model for a maintenance assessment district and then another one for a parcel tax for public safety. You want to pick something and again have the assessment engineer run the model.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mills.
I think, Troy, to that, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I think then you need to put 2 more columns on this little matrix and tell us which ones take parcels, and then what is the cost, the estimated cost associated with working that system through it, and that we're doing with the assessment engineer, not only dollars but estimated time, so we can see. I mean, and some of these may be ones that, based on that, we will not even entertain them, and there's no sense in putting them in a survey. So, I mean, it would behoove us as a council, I would think, to have that information as well, because in the comment, towards the comment I made earlier, and which Ms. Folk picked up on the XYZ 4 horsemen, you know, we need to be very conscious of how we spend money at this point in time. So I want to see what we're looking at, okay? And I know you're shooting from the hip a little bit on dollars, but hopefully you can have a pretty good idea of what the cost would be.
I think we can ascertain some of those costs, and if you remember, we did the canyon fee study for the drainage. That was a multiple month process. I believe, I don't think John Raymond's here, but I think in total we're up to 8 months now into the process, and that was a cost of at least $60,000 to $70,000 to the best of my memory.
54.
54. There you go. So obviously, some of those, depending on the size and scope of what we're looking at, it could be very costly. It could be up to $60,000, and it could take many months to facilitate. So we could get some costing from various consulting firms who do this work and put that as a column in there so the council has some information to make an informed decision. But as we all know, the clock is ticking every day, so we would have to get that information pretty quick so that the council can make a decision as to what they want to do.
And I think what that will tell us is that those probably will be the taxes we won't be interested in looking at, because it's just going to take too much time and too much money for what we have. So.
Yeah.
Ms. Folk.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Chris said, because I don't want to do this piecemeal, and this to me, what we have tonight is just a piecemeal approach to it. I want to see the overall, what it's going to cost us and how long it'll take, and we might have to look at some of these in a two-step process. Maybe not all of these can go on the November ballot. Maybe some of them will have to go on the March ballot. And how that will impact our budget and our revenue and when that money would come in. So, but first of all, I really do want to see how much it's going to cost as an overall picture so that we can look at that.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Ponier.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about this timetable. I guess, Mr. Reddy, I'm going to ask you, I mean, how long would it take to prepare stuff for neighborhood associations? Because I guess I'm going back to what the mayor had mentioned about some of these real issues, and aren't these the real issues we need to get out in front of the citizens before we move this and on this path here? And is that the way we want to go about it? So, you know, that's an important component. And what kind of timing are you thinking of even putting together a document like what the mayor was talking about and getting it out there, and us as a council deciding those are some of the critical issues?
To answer that question, I believe, Councilman, in a manner that's going to resonate as legitimate to you, because these are the confluence of many complicated issues, and we have probably as many questions as we have answers. Okay. Not the least of which is we needed to wait till we got through this last election a couple weeks ago to understand that what the state may do. And that's the caveat. Now we know what they may do as opposed to what they were going to have to do. That being said, I think we can focus staff on a couple things. One, the discussion tonight was important to raise the issue in the community. I think now those bells will start to ring. The awareness is there. We can, as agenda setters in the community, we can ask the neighborhood associations to put this as a priority, and I believe they will respond. We'll get a good sense of where the community is there. I would recommend that over the course of the next several study sessions over the next few month period is that we allocate a certain amount of time in each study session for some citizen input and discussion, continued discussion on the budget. At the same time, we run these concurrent paths of finding out the cost of the engineering and the study and the implementation, and perhaps get a firm like we have here started with some raw data. The short answer to this is you need information from several different areas, and I will commit to you that staff will do that, and in a couple-month period, I think you'll have enough information to make some informed decisions on exactly what you want to do.
Okay, I want to ensure as we go to the neighborhoods, we're going to the neighborhoods with a standard of, yeah, exactly. This is it. This is where we're going. So if one neighborhood meeting is the first week of April and the next one is the fourth week of April, we're pretty pinpointed on data that we're giving them.
And we'd ask them actually to have special meetings.
Okay.
I think that would be a legitimate reason.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I could just offer one thing from having gone through these campaigns, the way that this matrix is really good because it really gives you detailed information and a whole bunch of options. The reality is the more options you're asking people to analyze, the more complicated it is, the harder it is for them to give you legitimate feedback. Some of these, although these are all options, some of these are actually very similar. The distinctions between them are very subtle. I think that probably one of the things that should happen here is some of this could get sort of further refined and reduced into what are the more realistic and end up with a set that are creates significant variation or choice. But you could end up with a smorgasbord that's not 11 things, but it really revolves itself down to, well, a much, 3 or 4 or 5 things. Two is also good. Because again, and the other aspect is, if you're trying to have consultants analyze and develop data, the more things they're trying to analyze, the more expensive that process is going to be. So I think this is a really good starting point in terms of letting you see the universe. But I think at the staff level, we need to kind of be working and doing some strategizing and see if we can boil this down to major alternatives. It was very interesting a few years ago when we went through the landscape and lighting district process, and we ended up with a hearing at the high school where the auditorium was totally filled. And we had a bunch of people that ended up saying that they thought it was more fair to have a utility tax because it was broader based. It wasn't just focused on parcels and the value of parcels. It was, given how we wanted to use the money, it was a broader base. And, it was really a pretty legitimate point. And when the city went back and analyzed that and came back to it, we said, okay, fine. It was good to have that hearing. That gave us good information. We're going to drop that away, and that involved a whole engineering process we didn't have to do. We're going to go down the utility tax. And that kind of became our agenda that we stuck with for a number of years thereafter. So just in sum, I think we can probably work on this list a little bit, narrow it down, and end up with something that at least when you're trying to explain it to the average citizen out there, it would be less confusing.
Council, are there any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What that does suggest is a good lead into the role of the Budget Task Force, which is the next item on the agenda. If, in fact, Council wants them to play a continued role, it's certainly my recommendation that since we have a significant amount of information gathering to do on the revenue side at this point, this would be a good task for them to assist. But that is the question. The chairman of the Budget Task Force, Mr. Stiles, has indicated a willingness to serve in whatever capacity the council requests.
Council? Let's vote.
Well, I fully believe that the Budget Task Force should be brought in at this time because there's a lot of talent on that task force, and they did a fabulous job with analyzing our personnel issues and other issues that we had. And if they're willing to continue, I see a number of ways that we can use them, not only doing the background and research on these, but when we come up with our list of what our possible cuts would have to be, there were also some things that the Budget Task Force talked about that may give the citizens more information to look at. And one of them was a consolidation of services with other cities, and maybe we need to pursue that a little bit more aggressively than we have before. The other was contracting out certain of our services. We may have to pursue that a little bit further to at least compare pricing, so that when we do present something to the citizenry, we know that we have all the facts, and I don't think we have adequate staff to do that. And there was a great group of volunteers that Mike and I worked with, and I think a number of them that I've heard from are willing to continue.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Puglia.
Mr. Reddy, could you educate me again, this time, when the Budget Task Force created, specifically why, what was their specific charge, how were people selected, and what would be the specific charge of this group this time?
Councilmember, the previous task force was put into force as a result of the budget issues we went through over the last 2-year period. City council members chose, each member chose, if I remember correctly, members of that committee, 2 members of the committee. Thank you, Councilman. And their task was to come back with some recommendations to the city council of ways, in essence, to alleviate our budget deficit situation. 2 members who were not council members at that point, Councilmember McCullough, Councilwoman Fote, were members of that committee. And it's pretty much the sum and substance of what it was about. And as a follow-up, it probably would be helpful if a council member would continue on that, and it might be a natural choice for a subcommittee or one of you.
And so the specific charge again this time will be to?
Whatever this council decides to make it.
I think that's an excellent observation. I think considering where we are and with what they've done, the focus needs to be very specific. And we don't have that specificity at this moment.
But we're going to flip a coin about which one of you is going to be on the committee.
Okay, but that gives us something that we can report back on our thoughts and ideas for the Budget Task Force.
And I think we might not only want to outline what specifically we want them to do, but we may also need to look at some areas where people have dropped off, or where we have areas that we don't have expertise now, and we might need to do some additional appointments.
Okay. Mr. Mills.
How do you always know when I want to talk?
I watch everything.
You get up from your seat.
You wake up.
That's true. That is true. You know, I can reach that hammer from here. You know.
You're going to hold a mirror under your nose there a minute ago.
That's only because I find every time Tom's at the table, you know, it's really interesting stuff. You know. I think the work of the budget task force, I think, was very helpful. I wished we would have had it a little sooner. And we talked about that when it did come out. It takes time when you're a volunteer, especially. So the more focused, I really think they pick up where they left off, and we perhaps tell them or guide them on which areas that they looked at last time that we need more help on. And I think we need to make it very specific and very quick, because Tom, we need their input at the start of the budget process, not when we're ready to adopt it. And I don't know exactly what the schedule is. I know Steve was asking. We're going to start having regular meetings on that within the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Is that pretty much correct?
That's right.
On the budget review? Yeah, probably sometime early in April.
Yeah,
We're
and
gonna
I
start.
think so. We need to get them focused early. And so I don't know how we particularly do that. Maybe we need to review the report previously and come back with where we would like them to focus. Because I don't think it can be as broad as it was last time. It definitely needs to be more focused.
Well,
Ms. Foat?
the last time, it was a tremendous learning curve. I think the Budget Task Force spent the first 4 months of its existence just in meetings with staff to get everyone up to speed. And so you're not going to have that this time because if the majority of people stay and we add just some expertise, then I think that they won't have the same startup period that we had when we started.
Okay, so it seems like there's a consensus to continue, but we'll have to determine the focus.
And also, Mayor, I presume there'll be several vacancies on that, not the least of which because we have
Well, I
some
think if
council
we're
members.
looking at the focus, we may not need as many people.
Yeah, I suggest we find out who that served last time would be willing to serve again.
Okay, thank you.
But let's go back to part of, Chris's question and our question as well. So that specific focus, should it be now that we've agreed to this, that the staff, David, maybe you come back with a couple of specific focus objectives, and then we have an opportunity to brainstorm those, so we are moving this ahead quickly? Should that be the step?
Yes, and
Okay.
also if there are council members who have thoughts and ideas
Okay.
about, the focus, they can also share that information.
Okay.
Okay, Mr.
Well, briefly, there were 3 subcommittees. One was on the in-housing and outsourcing issues, which was the city attorney's office and public safety. There was the revenue enhancement subcommittee, which we've pretty much covered what they did last time. Most of this stuff came out of them. And then there was the another committee that looked at benefits for city employees and PERS. So those were really the three areas.
So maybe they
that-
need a new direction.
I don't know if they need a new direction. You might want to throw some of those out, or just continue, because that's relatively narrow already. So there's three areas: public benefits, outsourcing, and revenue enhancement.
Yeah, but the other 2 finished their reports. Did they not?
There was 2 that were finished. The revenue enhancement
Was the only one.
did not finish their reports, but
But
I
that's
think
the
it
one
was
we're doing.
it was the consensus of the budget task force was that they weren't finished. This was a preliminary report, even the ones that were submitted. On the city attorney issue, they weren't able to get apples and apples to compare. When they looked at people who had outsourced the city attorney's office, they weren't able to really get good hard data in the time frame that we had allotted to us on what kind of outsourcing had they done in addition to having an in-house city attorney. So we were looking at a $400,000 number, but we didn't know if they had used other attorneys for specific cases and areas of expertise that were outside of their in-house attorney. That was what they were going to kind of do next. So a lot of the report was preliminary in nature.
If I could, maybe as an illustration, just ask something like, for example, the revenue enhancement. Staff's just giving you this table, and we talked about there may be a need to kind of focus in a little bit on this. It might be one thing if staff was to try and provide that focus and get it specific, and then just use the task force as a sounding board to go back and say, okay, here's the focus we were going to give and the ones we were going to look at. What do you think about that? As opposed to, just throwing it to the task force and saying, okay, here are the 11 things, now you go to town with it. Many of the members may not have background in terms of benefit assessment districts and parcel taxes, et cetera, and it might take them more time to get
It
up.
wouldn't make any sense to give this to them. I mean,
Okay.
that would be our issue at this point. And I think that's why I'm looking at the focus of the committee. I think we're going to we may have to redirect. So let staff make some recommendations to us, and then if we have some others, because it appears that many of those things that they focused on are either time sensitive, and we're currently working on, or they're being addressed or have been addressed.
And many of them are on this list already.
Yes.
So you're sort of saying that there will be a budget task force, but the staff should be using it in order to sort of implement the citizen participation and getting the information out there, and maybe get specific about what role it can play in terms of the work that staff's doing. I mean, is that what you're thinking about?
No, I don't think so. I think what we're saying is that staff will come back to us with a couple of specific recommendations where they think that the budget task force can be beneficial to us, and the council will do the same, but it appears it'll be different from what it was before. Okay? All right. Mr. Ray, you want to continue?
Yes, we're ready to move on to number 2 on the agenda. It has 2 components, Mayor and members of council. It's the time and the format of the study sessions. And briefly, one, City Council had indicated there was an interest in starting the meetings earlier from the 7 o'clock hour to the 6 p.m. hour. That's the first question. And then the second question arises from several of the newer council members had an interest in study sessions being more of a visioning process, if you will, as opposed to the format we've had. So that would be more of a council discussion in directing staff how you wanted the formats of study sessions to continue. And final piece of that is the future docket review. Depending upon what you decide on study session format, there is still some items on the docket, and we would like some direction, and appreciate some direction on where you wanted to go with those. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd recommend first if we had the discussion on the council start time. Thank you.
Council?
How long are we budgeting for closed session?
That would probably entail that we would start closed session a half hour earlier, or at 4:30 instead of 5. That would give us an hour and a half before each council meeting.
And we're just talking study sessions here. We're not talking
No,
legislative meetings.
It would be both, or it could be one or the other. The original discussion was that both meetings would begin. As you recall, last year council enacted the glassy eye rule because council meetings tended to go beyond 11 p.m. The glassy eye rule said council would have to take a vote to go beyond 11. Part and parcel of that is because we started at a late hour and it continued on later in the evening.
So would the glassy eye rule end at 10 p.m.?
That would be your choice.
Now you're talking.
I don't remember who brought this up, but it would be my feeling that we should just leave it the same, because I think that if you start at 6:30, you have people who want to attend the meetings, they get home from work by the time they have dinner, feed the kids, or whatever else has to be done. 6:30 is pretty early, and 7 o'clock seems to work for everybody. We've been doing pretty well in not ending that late. I mean, it's only
Unless we have a short agenda.
well, no, the only times we've ended that late is times where we've had some really spirited discussion from our citizens in the audience, and that's the times that we've ended real late. And so I don't see any need to change it.
Well, let's discuss it. Council, what do you think?
I'm not necessarily arguing for moving it up earlier, but I've also seen, especially some of our more seasoned citizens, leaving the meetings around 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and without having a chance to participate in the issue that they came for, because our meetings do run so late. So you're playing both ends off each other. Some people aren't going to be able to come because you start at 6. Other people are leaving early because it's running past 9 o'clock.
Or they're bored.
Mr. Pugnet.
I'm pretty open on this topic. If we do move it, I don't want to have dinner at 4:30 though. I'll state that right now. But Mike and Chris have different businesses. Mine's a little bit more free-forming, so I really don't mind which way we go. But if it's to cut into actual business operations of fellow council members, I would probably be opposed if they were. So I'm okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mills.
I actually favor the 4 o'clock study session and council at 6. I think it gives an opportunity, as Mike said, for more people, I think, to stay longer. But I agree with Steve. I mean, we can eat at 5 like we normally do, but I think it's an opportunity to try to get done at a decent hour, but also I think I think you're going to get people. I think you can play the people game either way you want. And I don't think. I mean, there's people going to work better for 6 and better for 7. So I think it really comes down to, I think, how late do you want to stay, and it's not just us; it's also staff. And I think 4 o'clock. We did it for a while when we were having 3-hour closed sessions, which we haven't seemed to have needed lately, which has been nice. And I think the 4 o'clock worked okay for me from a business-wise. As long as I plan on it, it works okay. And Mike, I don't know how you feel about the 4 o'clock, but if we started at 6, I think it would. I just think it affords more people an opportunity to stay awake longer, even if they're watching TV. You know. So.
We seem to be throwing these numbers around. Didn't we say 4:30 start closed session and 6 o'clock start the meeting? Not 4 o'clock. And traditionally, I know we've been in a steep learning curve on closed session, and we had 2-hour closed session meetings for a while, even 3 hours. Didn't we go 3 hours for a while?
Yes,
Yeah, we went 3 hours. For those of you who wonder why we look sort of tired at 9 o'clock on television, we were in our 6th hour. Traditionally, is an hour and a half been about right for closed session for the council once, everybody's up to speed?
It was 5:30 and then started at 7. I think it was mainly because of Ms. Hodges and the travel time she had with her business. I think I think any study session less than 2 hours any closed session less than 2 hours is going to hurt us. I think it's going to back us up. I can't even really think of where we got done of a 2-hour session when we wanted to get done, even just to give ourselves that few minutes that we talk about always wanting and never getting, So 4 o'clock and 6 would be what I would like to see, and I'd also like to see the 5th Wednesday not being used. I think not just, and I'm really not talking about from my standpoint. I'm talking about an opportunity for staff to get caught up. I mean, we're burying them, and it gives I don't know how many times it happens a year. That fifth Wednesday. I mean, I don't think it's even 6 times, but I think it gives an opportunity to get caught up a little bit, and because this council more than the previous council, and newness is probably the reason, is giving staff a lot more to do than I've seen them have to do in the past, and I think the opportunity to get that 5th Wednesday off would be. Would benefit us all, and also the citizens, and give staff an opportunity to get caught up on the jobs that they do besides making us happy.
I certainly concur on the 5th Wednesday. So,
Well, just in terms of closed session, whether we've had 3 hours or an hour and a half closed session, it's going to be filled to the max. So I think that just depends on how we structure it. I think if we change the regular time, I think we perhaps need to phase it in or let people know significant time out that we're going to do it because, I mean, people are such creatures of habit and they've been doing it the same way for a long time. So if we change it, I think we'll need quite a bit of lead time in order to prepare the community for it because the first time someone doesn't have a chance to speak or a group of people and they thought it was at 7, but we will hear. So as long as we prepare for it, I'm open to it. If we want to start earlier, it'll be fine with me. And even the fifth Wednesday. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If council changes the actual council time to 6 p.m., the closed session time is less of a hard number. Council could, change 2 hours, 3 hours, 1.5 hour at their discretion. That's a little easier number to be flexible with.
The only thing there is that we're going to have to notice each meeting unless in the ordinance you put what the time is. And then you could, if you said 4 o'clock, you could basically decide, well, this particular time you're not going to start till 4:30. But it's a lot easier for the city clerk's office to have a regular starting time and put it in the ordinance and then stick to it.
I know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we should pick one time and we should do it now. I think we've belabored the point long enough.
So bring it back. And the future docket, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, just a little clarification on direction.
Yes.
That's what we
If I
need to
could,
get.
please.
You didn't understand
All right.
that?
I heard Chris mention 4 o'clock, closed session, 6 o'clock, council meeting.
And that was the first recommendation
and
that you made.
I support that recommendation.
How far can we go in this discussion, Mr. Elshire? We're not supposed to be able to just really debating this at this point, are we?
Yeah, we can.
You can
We
give us
can.
direction.
Yeah,
Okay.
just no vote.
I believe with what the Mr. Mayor said about if you give time, it'll get filled up. So I prefer to see us go with hour half study session, 4:30 start time, and 6 regular session.
Even after April 15th?
And the Ms. Fote takes on the liaison to the budget task force.
That's out of order.
Why don't we just look at it that way? I mean, we're talking, I think the council has been very respectful of the other council members in the past. I see no reason for that to change. If Mr. McCullough has a problem, then with the 4:30, as selfish as he is, I think we should all honor that.
He's got a bill for that new business tax hike that we're talking about.
Okay.
Well, then why don't we go 4:30 and 6:30?
We could do that. But I do think an hour and a half closed session will probably back us up.
Yeah, I do too.
And I would like to throw in there the, not the 5th Wednesday as well. How's that for direction?
As soon as 3 people say something, we're done.
Ditto.
Council members, I would suggest, why don't I bring 2 different resolutions to the, if,
Do the 4:30, 6:30.
4:30, 6:30, and no 5th Wednesday, right?
And dinner at 5.
Feed this man.
Low carb.
okay, 4:30, 6:30.
Okay.
And council cabinet.
Okay. Also, the other issue then with regard to council cabinet on the doc review, we need to have that consideration insofar as the fifth meeting of this month, we were going to consider the idea of the special meeting for Section 14. I wasn't sure if you wanted not to have the 5th meeting this month. We certainly could do that at the first study session. However, that is also a council cabinet meeting.
Not for this month.
Well, April 14th. The budget update is the next council cabinet meeting, and we need to let the chair know if they're not going to have
Okay, April 14th, the clerk reminds us, is the next council cabinet meeting,
regularly scheduled. So
regularly scheduled.
Okay,
And we missed the last one.
yes.
So as we look at the docket, if we could keep in mind then, if the 31st will be the special meeting for the Section 14, we probably would not want to have any other item on that agenda.
Okay.
So the 24th of March would be our next study session.
Say it again.
The 24th of March is the only study session we will have because the
Okay.
31st will be Section 14.
Right.
The 14th of April will
Okay.
be a cabinet meeting.
And Mr. Mayor, this,
Mills.
what we're talking about is standard, regular meetings. We're coming into budget time. We want to get on this as well as soon as we can. If we're looking at special meetings in here, I think we're not telling you don't schedule special meetings because we've got council cabinet on the 14th. If we've got something we need to look at budget-wise, then
Yeah.
let us know early so we can get a date plan in there.
Then we may end up having to have special budget meetings.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, are we ready to talk about the docket?
Yes, it would be for the 24th of March, our next study session, if with some direction on what council may want to see on that agenda.
Well, there's an issue, of the neighborhood services and how we're doing that, and I'm hearing discussions that is proceeding, and we need to hear what's going on and bless it.
What we could do, Mayor,
Or-
on that issue is, it could very well be that we are proceeding with the actual model. Just bring that to the legislative calendar, and council could have the debate at that point if they're in agreement. Now, we are having a committee of all the neighborhoods work with us to put this model together, so it will have some significant input from the neighborhoods when council sees it.
And I think that's good, except there were council members that made some specific recommendations and also did some research and had some specific ideas of what they were looking for. So I'm concerned about us going so far in one direction and bring that forward and then it not be something that the council's going to be prepared to accept.
Okay, so I hear a recommendation that neighborhood services be on the 24th.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, you'll be here. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
A question for Mr. Reddy. What is the status of design review? Is that moving along in the legislative docket and that we don't need to look at it at study session?
Mr. Mills, maybe you can help me on refreshing our collective memory. I think that issue has been resolved. I mean, design review, they've made the change as requested by City Council, and that is now in place.
No, I think it needs to come back here, I thought, because it would change the process.
Where they have a member of the Planning Commission on design review.
Well, no, it was more than that. It was kind of a revamping of the entire way it's done and the makeup of the committee and really formalizing it, because currently it's not formalized.
It needs to go to legislative calendar,
Right.
Mr. Reddy. So I think we've had a couple study sessions on it, so I think we just need to talk to Mr. Evans and find out when he can schedule it for legislative action.
I think Mr. Evans, I had asked him about it a couple weeks ago, and I think he said it was ready, and Planning Commission has looked at it, so.
Okay, well then, how about if we agendize that at the next legislative? Or would you prefer to have a discussion at study session? Or are you okay with either?
I think probably, I mean, I don't need to see it. I've been involved with it for way too long, and
Okay.
I don't know about the other council members, but it's really not hard to grasp, and maybe just reading through it would help. And I think the representative from the planning department can probably answer your question. I see her out there nodding her head.
Then we will schedule that for the next practical legislative, which Trish is saying would be the 7th of April. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Pugliese.
One of the items that we talked about at the end of the last study session meeting was the opportunity in these sessions to brainstorm and think a little bit more globally and talk about the blueprint and maybe not have much of this talking at us, but talking with people. We never came to a resolution of where we might go with that, but we did ask, I think, Mr. Elshire, and he gave us some guidance, perhaps a broad umbrella of strategic planning for the city and what fit in there. And I'm still extremely interested in, and I'm not sure how that piece is going to work out. I think we got to figure it out, but it's very important, I think, for us to start putting some of the issues we know, the downtown mall area, the interchanges. I mean, things that are going to make us a complete city 10 and 20 years from. Certainly, we have to react to certain things and become educated. There's no doubt about that. But at the same point, I think we kind of need to change this format to include a little bit more brainstorming with us, and however we can do that, and what an umbrella, because I think that's why I ran, and that's why the citizens elected me, and it was to position this city, and certainly we do it piece by piece, but I think we're missing a little bit more global piece. I don't have the answer, but I think we can get there, and I'd look for David to give us some guidance on how to do that. This, Mr. Elshire to say how we can do it without violating any act of brainstorming. So I just wanted to bring that discussion back up.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. And legal was supposed to present some options to us, so we can put that on for the 24th.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Folt.
Mr. Reddy, this list that we have here, which we've had now for months, is kind of, when I look at this list, it feels like a leftover list. It doesn't feel like a forward-thinking list. This is all things that were left over from past history. And I'm wondering if, there are things that are on this that I think are really serious issues that we have to address, such as the homeless issue, and I think affordable housing is another. And there are some that are really, I think, important. But I also don't feel that we've had the chance to add to this list or subtract from this list. This is just the list we've been presented with. And I see things that are on this list that I don't really think are important things for us to talk about, and I don't even know how they got to the list. And, so I don't have any history on why the cat declare ordinance is on here, so I know I've made that as an example before, but I feel like I've got this old leftover list that we're supposed to do something with, and I'm not quite clear. Because I agree with Mr. Pugliese, when I ran, it was to create a new vision for the city. And so I think rather than us trying to put this list in some sort of priority order, I think what we need to do is to get as quickly as possible into that visioning process and make our own list and take off some things on this list that I think don't need to be here.
I think that based upon our discussion for the 24th, shortly thereafter, we should be able to have our strategic planning session, and we can do away with this list or revise it, and we'll have our own list.
Mr. Mayor, it's very possible you could have your strategic planning session on the 24th.
I don't.
No. Let's just follow with what we have, those issues on there for now, and that gives us a little time to get them done.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mills.
Strategic planning and visioning, that could encompass a lot. And I think if certain members have ideas towards that and what they were looking at or looking towards, then perhaps they should be given an opportunity to present those to the council as a group. And maybe the format to do that is, maybe we take, at the end of our study session meetings, we just allot a half an hour towards that every meeting. If that'll get it there, it'll get it moving, we can put it on every time. Because, you don't want to keep, if there's visions that are out here and people want to see the city going in a certain way, I don't want to keep putting it off week after week after week. If we make it a constant item on there, which we can do, then it's there. If we choose to take advantage of it, that's great. And if we don't, then we don't. So, but I think we'd give an opportunity to just let it be just a part of our meeting.
Well, I think that's a good suggestion. But initially, the format, because of the changes in the Brown Act, we didn't feel like we had the legal approval to discuss things the way we had in the previously in workshops. So I think initially it's going to take more than just the end of a meeting to do that. But I think after we've had several, because this is to replace the workshops that we used to have, then perhaps we can allot some time. Because I think if we try to do visioning consistently, it could be a bit problematic. We establish our vision and we move forward. Okay? Any other comments on the docket?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Mills.
What did we just tell staff to do?
It's for the 24th.
And what I heard was that you would like me to come back with a staff report on the 24th that would talk about some ways that you could structure a visioning sort of process.
Okay.
And this city and other cities have done that sort of thing in the past, and there seem to be some things that make it more or less productive. So I will try and put something together that talks about some of those alternatives, and then you can have a visioning discussion about visioning.
That's right. Let us have our visions.
And am I also hearing that you will never see this list again or care to see this list again?
Well, yeah, we need to see the list at least once more so we can delete. Now, did we want to see design review on that again before it came to legislative?
I personally don't need to see it,
but you think council should see it?
I don't know if council should see it. We did.
I think so.
I don't know if this group talked about it early on when you guys first came on or not.
No.
I was at that study session, so I've seen it.
I think we can do a memo to council and basically outline the process and all the changes that have been recommended. I think that may be the simplest way, unless you really want a study session on it.
I think the issue for you is it kind of significantly changes how the relationship between the Planning Commission, the City Council, and this Design Review Board. And it's a very logical. It's gone through a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of history to it. I think it's something that makes sense. If the council members feel they really want to have some overall dialogue about that before you're presented with a process, then you should put on a study session. If you are willing to just have something presented and then be able to vote on it, it could just go straight to legislative without that sort of dialogue process.
Go ahead and talk with council.
Yeah, I think, and this might make it an easier decision, this was specifically geared towards making the city more business friendly, and I think legislative and a staff report at that point we can explain very easily.
Great.
Ms. Fote?
Are we finished with that other subject? Because I have something else I want.
Could I just, for clarification, we have then two things on the agenda for the 24th council, the whole neighborhood services issue and some sort of brainstorming on strategic planning, that whole visioning idea of study sessions, that process. So there's two things on the agenda. Probably what I also do is I will also agendize a budgetary issues, just in case may have some information to bring back to you at that time. Thank you.
And before we adjourn, Ms. Folt?
Yeah, Mr. Reddy, I would like you to give some direction when we ask for a report. There is what I can estimate probably a ream of paper here in exhibits, which multiplied by 5, and the copy time and the staff time it took to create this, I really am outraged, because there are copies of newspaper ads and schedules and things that I think are totally inappropriate for what we asked for. So maybe in the future we can ask, especially if we ask the Tourist Bureau, the Bureau of Tourism, to give us a report. This is very helpful. This is a lot of paper that didn't need to have happen.
Mr. Mayor, and I did ask for a comprehensive report, and maybe it was my fault, but I think I got what I asked for, and so
You got more than what you asked for,
perhaps,
believe me.
perhaps. So,
Yes.
and now from now on, I may use that word comprehensive a little more sparingly, but.
Okay. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting.